welcome back to another episode of This Takes the Cake. We are here with two guests today. Reverend Michael Calderin and Whiskey is joining us in the office today, so we figured he'd make his debut. Whiskey, say hi. We are talking to Reverend today, talking all about the officiant business, being in the business of officiating weddings and things like that. And we are going over all kinds of, thank you for coming up. I know it wasn't an easy drive.
It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
And you came to our grand opening. Thank you.
Yes, I did. What a wonderful time.
Hell of a party.
Yes, it was.
Us planners know how to party.
Yes, it was. They do.
So, highlighting your achievements, we know you're a renowned wedding officiant based in Palm Beach. You're actually in South Florida all over. You're in Miami a lot because I know we've done a lot of Miami weddings too.
Correct. Perfect. Yeah, my office is actually in Pembroke Pines.
Okay, so you're south. And tell me how you got into becoming an officiant, because I know we chatted a little bit on Friday at the grand opening about your history and your past and where you came. So tell me about your background.
So, I had officiating weddings was nowhere on my radar.
Really?
Being clergy was.
Okay.
And, and I've been clergy for many years. And back in 98, I had an intern who asked me to officiate her wedding.
Well, you got that voice too.
You think? So she was actually a tennis pro and
cool.
a professional, and had wanted me to officiate a very small, intimate wedding for her, and I did.
Yeah.
And I had a really great time. And before you know it, it's like, this person would, hey, would you mind officiating my wedding?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, sure. Still not thinking anything long term or that this was going to really blow up into anything
for sure.
that it has. And in right around 2003, a good friend of mine who I knew from New York and now she lives down here had also asked me to officiate her wedding at the Palms.
So now it's really rolling.
And now it's really rolling. And this was at the Palms,
and
2003.
You're going to have to quit your day job.
Yeah, right. And I did that wedding, and the planner that I was working with at the time, who was no longer in the industry, started referring me to her couples.
That's awesome.
And also, ironically, at the same time, I don't know how many of the listeners would remember this, but back then, the Knot had message boards that brides would actually chat with each other.
Oh, that's cool.
So I wound up doing a wedding for a bride that was very active on this message board. Well, before you know it, I'm doing weddings for everybody on that message board. It was like this whole circle of friends.
Yeah.
There was about 6 or 7 brides that were all on this one message board.
That's really
and it
cool.
just started steamrolling after that.
Yeah. And now you just said, okay, let's just do this.
Yeah. Well, and quite frankly, I enjoy it.
Yeah. Well,
I have a great time.
I feel like, and the same thing with events, we always morbidly joke there's a reason we don't plan funerals, but I feel like although there's stress, but weddings are so happy. Everybody's happy, and there's details and stress, but it's a happy occasion. So generally, everybody's in a really pleasant place.
It is a happy occasion. I mean, there's always behind the scenes dynamics going on, right, with families, and you know as well as anyone that occurs, right? All of a sudden, family members that are helping the couple financially, now they feel that they have an opinion.
Oh, yeah.
They feel that they have stock, and there's all kinds of dynamics that are happening behind the scenes. And I love working with my couples because I meet with them multiple times and we do premarital counseling, and I'm able to assist them with some of those crisis and dynamics that surface during that planning time.
That stays within these walls.
Exactly, right? And nobody sees the behind the scenes stuff that goes on, and nobody should.
No.
Right? That's why you guys do such a great job, because at the end of the day, what everyone should see is a perfect production.
Exactly. And we'll talk all the shit on the podcast, but no names are ever mentioned. But that's the thing is, and I think one of our first weddings together, I was kind of like, oh, you've hired an officiant. Okay, we've hired an officiant. And a lot of weddings is, oh, we've hired an officiant. But I hadn't seen any officiant really take a personal approach to it and get to know the couple well in advance of the wedding and talk to them and meet with them. So I was really kind of like, is he a family friend? Does he know them? And they were like, no, we hired him. And that was where I was like, you can tell that, you know, when they, and I'd say this all the time, when you do love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. And
Absolutely.
with you, we can tell that, you know, you
Yeah.
love what you do and things like that. But I love that you're able to work with them along the way too, keeping track of everything.
And I always tell them, for me, this is a lifelong relationship.
Plan the marriage, not the
You
wedding.
know, I have a lot of families that I have served over the years, multiple different events, from baptisms to funerals to weddings, as well as I've had couples come back to me for counseling when they've hit some bumps in the road.
Of course.
You know,
it's
as
bound
all
to
couples
happen.
do.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm happy to be there for them.
Yeah.
Through all those events.
Yeah. And before you were officiating, what were you doing? I know you were in New York.
Yes, in New York, and even down here, you know, for a long time, I was a commander with the Broward Sheriff's Office, and there was I couldn't remember the magazine that had wrote an article. This was like maybe 2017, 2018.
Oh wow.
But essentially, they were writing an article, and we did a photo shoot at the Palms, and they were just talking about, like, there were some days I would literally I always have different changes of clothing in the car, and would literally be coming from like the scene of a homicide, and changing in the bathroom
To go do a wedding.
go officiate a ceremony.
I mean,
You know,
that could be a slogan.
yeah,
God, we could really make a commercial.
you could. There could be a book
From the
too, but
beginning
that's
to
another
well,
story.
yeah, exactly. A reality show, a book. We Bravo
Yeah.
needs to approach us, and we'll just keep it
Yeah.
going.
But I ran Crime Stoppers for years, so I was always either coming or going
Yeah.
to some kind of police-related event in the midst of the insanity.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. There's always there's definitely something. And then when you started officiating, you kind of discovered that was more of your passion, which I feel like is an upwards turn from homicides and things like that for sure. So
Well, and you know, I'm still a police and fire chaplain, and I still respond to different tragedies and crisis in the community.
Yeah.
You know, from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas to the Surfside building collapse, FIU bridge collapse, things like that. And people say, well, like, how do you do that? You know, and it's like, well, I've got these beautiful weddings that I do on weekends that's really, you know, balances life and really balances all the emotions you have to deal with. But because I am full-time clergy, I could have a day where I start off with a baptism, I do a funeral, and then I end with a wedding.
amazing.
All in the same day. I mean, that's a lot of different emotions.
And that's a lot of compartmentalizing to leave, you know, like you were saying, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, where there's a shooting and kids and things like that, and praying with those families, to doing a baptism or a wedding. It's got to be hard to kind of shut that door for a minute. Obviously, the emotions don't stop, and then switch gears.
Yeah, well, and not just that, but, you know, as ceremony officiants, we're human beings, and we have lives too. And, you know, the other day, right before officiating a wedding, I found out a friend passed away. You know, and now I've got to put those emotions on hold to be able to do the wedding, and then deal with the emotions after.
For sure.
You know, back in 2005, my father passed away, and I had a wedding that day, and I didn't have anyone available that could cover.
Yeah.
But I think even if I did, I would still do the wedding, which I still did the wedding, because I'm like, you know, my father wouldn't want me to not do that wedding.
I get that.
So, you know, we always have to balance life.
And we don't
all
get
the
sick
different
days.
things. Right.
But, you know, we say that all the time. Like, I had a wedding we did a few weeks ago, and the florist showed up late, and she wasn't ready, and she wasn't done, and things were running behind. And she's like, well, I had people calling sick. I'm like, but that is not the bride's. That's the one day. That's the bride's. That's not her problem. That's a you problem, not a her problem. You got to call in extra staff. You got to get the job done. Right. I don't call in sick. I mean, me and Sarah talked about this the other day. We've run weddings with the flu. We just, you know, Dayquil up and go. You got to go. I mean, we have, obviously, our team is amazing, where we can call in other girls to help and things like that. And my girls are always willing to jump in and help. But, you know, certain couples, you got to be there. You
Absolutely.
You got to be there.
And especially, I feel, thank God I've never had to use any of my backups. Now I have multiple backups. I had surgery in 2014. I had kidney cancer.
Oh.
And I had a tumor removed. I had robotic surgery.
Wow.
And I was able to schedule it during a span where I didn't have weddings. I literally had a 10-day window.
Amazing.
And, coordinated it with the surgeon. And everybody's like, you're crazy. Like, just,
that's our life.
And I'm like, yeah, but, the couples are expecting me. Like, we've spent time together leading up to their special day. Like, I've got to do everything I can to be there, unless I'm dead, and then I can't be there.
Well, then, yeah, then we got to call back up.
My first wedding back from surgery, I literally was filled with gauze and all kind of bandages on.
But you're there.
But no one could tell. It was under my robe, and, I had my painkillers. I had someone drive me. I did the ceremony.
We got married 17 years ago in a Catholic church, and we had done all the premarital counseling and everything, and went through everything with the priest, and we had gone through our vows and had our everything written of what we wanted. And obviously, with the Catholic Church, you have it's pretty structured on how it's going to be. But we had gone over everything, and it was the day of the wedding. We had gotten to the church, and one of my bridesmaids came to me and said, "Don't freak out." And I'm like, That doesn't help. When you say don't freak out, I'm going to freak out.
Exactly.
Well, the priest isn't here. They've called in a backup priest. And it was fine, but the day of the wedding, that's not what I wanted. That's not what I envisioned. It's kind of like one of those things you got to roll with the punches on the day of the wedding. But that was one of my main things is like, wait, what? He doesn't know my vows. He doesn't know us. He wasn't in the counseling with us. So it was kind of like okay, it'll go on, but it's not what I visioned.
Right.
So.
Right.
So tell me tips for couples planning their ceremony. These lights are going out. Tips for the couples planning their ceremonies. I know you meet with them and you make it very personal. And it's funny because we did a wedding in Miami. We were at Trump International, and the couple do you remember them? It was Nicolette and Nicoletta. Yep. It was funny because we were cracking up during ceremony because the stories you were telling about them, and I was like, God, how long has he known them? Yeah. So what tips do you have for couples planning their ceremony as far as personalization and anything like that? Well,
I always recommend, because lots of times couples are unsure if they want to write personal vows. And I always, it's a lot of pressure if you're not used to writing vows. And what I tell them is, think of it as a personal message, right? You'll still do some vows that you'll repeat after me.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of do that traditional part with the promises. And then think of the message to each other as personal messages. And I tell them, think of 3 questions. What was life like before you met?
Yeah.
How has the other person impacted your life? And what do you hope for in the future? If you answer those 3 questions, you've got a beautiful message to each other. It's not too long. It's not too deep. It's not too intense. And, and I always tell them, think of the ceremony as a screenplay.
Yeah.
You're the main actors. I'm the choreographer, director, and screenwriter. And I've got to take everyone through the different scenes of the performance.
I love that.
Right? And we've got to be able to wrap it up in about 27.5 minutes.
Depending on the venue. Because I know when we're at the Addison, they're like, how long is it going to be? Because we got dinner coming out and salads.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And then, of course, the planner will be looking in the back there,
I'm at the end of the aisle going, wrap it up. We
exactly.
gotta go.
Exactly.
I love that. So, and so that's how we chatted a little bit about how you started your passion for officiating weddings and things like that. How do you feel about first looks and private vows beforehand, or do you kind of want to keep that in the ceremony? What are your thoughts on that? Because I know everybody's very opinionated on that.
Everyone is, and I know where photographers stand on that.
Yeah.
Because photographers always want to do a first look because they're going to be able to capture images that no one else is getting. But then that's my argument for keeping it in the ceremony, is that you're actually taking away, in my opinion, from the ceremony and from your guests, because they don't get to see the first look.
Yeah.
They don't get to hear those personal messages to each other. And, you know, in inviting guests to participate in your special day, that's a part of that experience.
That's what they want to see, yeah.
You know,
that's
it's
why
part of that
and
experience.
A lot of them flew in, so they come to see, I do. They want to see more than I do.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm of the old school, no first look, let everyone be a part of that first look. Sorry, photographers, but
all the photographers are unfriending you immediately.
Yeah, I know.
So on our side, I think it depends. I did not do a first look. I was very traditional with it. It really depends. And when we kind of do our, you know, onboarding call with our clients and things like that, we kind of go over like, what do they envision for the day? If they want to do a first look to get those pictures done ahead of time, that's great. But like, leave the veil off, leave the bouquet out, do something, you know, still have that moment afterwards. I will say that we see that the groom is much more natural in a reaction when there's not 150 people staring at him. So it's more of a private moment. Some couples want to do a first look because they want to spend more time with their guests at cocktail hour rather than doing pictures for that hour. They get to spend more time with their guests during that hour and mingling. I think to me, I mean, I'm happy to do it either way. I think it's just a matter of customizing the timeline. To me, it's more of also a time of year. If it's an early sunset time, you're going to be running into some dark pictures afterwards.
Correct.
So
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of factors that come into play, you know. And when I approach a ceremony discussion with a couple, you know, I'm also looking to see what their dream is, right? Because, and generally it's not so much the grooms, but usually the brides have this dream of what their wedding day, you know, is going to be like. Yeah. So I like to hear what they have envisioned over the years. Sometimes they do need some advice and some guidance on what's realistic and what's not realistic, because we both know that there are certain things that just won't work. Yeah. Right. But ultimately, you know, at the end of the day, and I try to be as unscripted as possible, because I think it's going to be more natural and more engaging also with the crowd, because we do need to keep the crowd engaged.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. And that's something I notice you do. It's not just standing up there talking for 20 minutes. Like, you do engage the crowd, and you're like, you know, it's like, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you guys, you know, things like that all the time. And they love it. They laugh and they giggle, and everybody wants, on some level, they're there for the moments, but they're also there to be entertained. So there's a little bit of laughter and stuff. It does keep them engaged as well, to be part of it.
It does, because, you know, we're in a time of everyone's on their phones, everyone's on their social media, you know, and it happens, right? But if you're keeping them engaged during the ceremony, it's less likely to happen, you know. And I can say that generally it doesn't, because they're watching, you know, and I have eye contact with the crowd as well. So if I see someone about to get on their mobile device, I give them that look, and they kind of get it.
You're Reverend, you're scary.
They get it.
You know, they don't want to be on your bad side. So tell me a little bit about your some expertise and some major moments in your career. I know we chatted a little bit. You've been published in multiple magazines, Brides Magazine, People Magazine most recently. So tell me a little bit about those weddings you've done.
Well, you know, those weddings have been for athletes, celebrities, celebrity families. You know, what's interesting is sometimes you know all about the guests that'll be there, and sometimes you don't. Yeah. I mean, I can remember many years ago doing a wedding for the brother of the actress Michelle Rodriguez.
Oh, very cool.
And that was actually at the Spanish Monastery.
Oh, I love that venue.
And no one told me that was his sister, including him. Yeah. You know, and she happened to show up before everyone, and kind of just walked in and was asking for a place to you know, freshen up and stuff, and I directed her, and I was like,
Where do I know her
I'm
from?
like, wait a minute. I think I know who that is.
That's so funny.
But so that's happened a few times where, there's someone either in attendance or even in the actual wedding party who is a celebrity or an athlete. But, as far as I'm concerned, every couple is a VIP.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And every couple's a celebrity. And we approach it that way and give them what they're dreaming about.
And I've been at weddings before where I'm like, same thing, where I'm like, I know them from somewhere, or I don't, and then I realize afterwards, and my husband's like, wait, what? And I'm like, I didn't know. Like, if it's a sports player or, anything, he's like, wait, you didn't know? And I was like, I didn't know. He's like, why didn't you? I was like, I don't know. Like, we did a wedding at the Boca Raton, and everybody was saying, oh, Derek Jeter's on property somewhere. Now, him, I would know. So I was looking. But he was around there somewhere, and I'm just like, wait, what? We've done weddings at the Breakers before, and apparently certain celebrities that come into the Breakers, no matter what wedding's going on, they show up to the wedding, they crash, and they take selfies, and nobody cares because it's a celebrity at their wedding. So I think it's funny because you do run into things that you never expected to run into, and you run into people and kind of, rub elbows with people that people are like, wait, what? And it's kind of like, I don't want to say another day at the office. I mean, it's definitely a unique experience, but it's also like, oh, take a seat, buddy. You've had a rough day. So it's definitely one of those things where it's kind of unique and fun, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, it was a call.
Yeah, absolutely. And certain venues, like the Boca Raton, the Breakers, you never know who's going to be walking down the hall.
Exactly.
And it's happened to me many times.
And it's one of those things where you're like, was that? No, stop. And you just keep going, and then you find out later it was. That's funny.
Yeah.
So any other milestones in your career that off the hand that you're just like, wow, that was cool?
There's been so many. And I can honestly say I feel so blessed that people have trusted me over the years, not just the couples, but the planners and a lot of the venues, because, when you recommend me, you're putting your name to me as well.
Yeah.
Right.
And don't screw it up.
And I'm the same. When I'm recommending a vendor to a couple, it's the same thing. I'm giving them my endorsement.
For sure. For sure.
And I've reached a point in my career where I'm now marrying children of couples that I have married.
That's crazy.
And believe me, I'm still not sure how I feel about that.
Yeah,
because it was like the
weird.
first time it happened, I was like talking to the bride. I'm like, oh, who referred you? And she's like, you married my parents. I'm like, what?
Oh,
and now I'm doing her twin sister's wedding.
Oh, that's
next
neat.
month,
That's
2 months. So
What do you think the common mistake is that couples make when crafting their vows, when they're stressed over the ceremony, things like that? What is one of the common mistakes that you think couples make?
I think they overthink it.
Yeah.
I think they overthink it, and understandably so, right? Because this is a one-time opportunity, and it's like you got to get it right.
Yeah.
But simple is okay.
Yeah.
And that's why I tell them, if you just focus on those 3 questions, it'll get your mind going.
Yeah.
And it'll open up some other ideas.
And I think it's hard balancing traditions with modern preferences and things like that come up, because I feel like, everybody, your whole family, your bridal party, everybody's excited for you. They're here to support you, but they all have an opinion. And the bottom line is your mother, your mother-in-law, they all got to have their weddings. And, certain things are important to have and certain things that are important to you. And it's one of those things where you don't want to cut people out who have an opinion, but you also, accept it, understand it, but then you still want to do your thing, which, like we talked about, tradition or first look, things like that. I would say, like, when I was getting married, we have obviously family conflicts and things like that. And, it was like, are you going to invite them? Are you not going to invite them? If somebody hasn't been in my life for so long, and people who have been in my life and supported me for all these years and are going to be there for me that day, I'm not going to invite somebody who hasn't been there for me and upset 15 people who have been there for me, kind of a thing. So I think it's balancing tradition and modern preferences. And I think that, also accepting everybody's opinion is kind of a balancing act too.
It really is. And my heart goes out to the couple sometimes because there is a real struggle that they go through because they're trying to keep their family happy and, keep grandma happy.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes it goes against what they really want, but they feel compelled, and a lot of it, like I said, financially, if family's contributing, they kind of feel like, okay, we need to do this, because of the financial contribution.
Yeah. I mean, even in my own wedding, I mean, there were things that my husband comes from a very strong, opinionated Italian family, and they were like, no, this is what we're doing. If I had to do it over again, do I think I would have done the church? Probably not. Do I, you know what I mean? I probably wouldn't have done the church because it was a lot of hoops to jump through that I felt like kind of put a damper on the excitement and the fun and the purpose of it, because there were so many rules and things like that and regulations. But at the same time, I didn't want to upset them and things like that. So, it really depends on what's important to you, your family. I mean, you are marrying him, but you're also marrying the family as well. And that's something you want to keep in mind. That being said, keep in mind when you're, and I tell couples this too, because I've had brides say, oh, I need you to be the go-between between me and my mother-in-law. I don't want to upset her and I can't tell her no, but you can tell her no.
Right.
Sure. Roll me right under the bus,
Right,
and
right.
I get that, but you're starting a life with somebody that you have to be able to have him have your back too. Have your partner have your back as well, because it is going to roll into families and children and opinions on that, and kids and daycare and schools and things like that. So you have to kind of have that. I appreciate your recommendation, but this is what we want as well.
Absolutely, and also, you also as a couple, as a young couple, you also have to set the precedent
and the boundaries.
That what, we're forming our family now, right? And this is how we're going to do it. Exactly.
And I think that for me, I was young, and it was kind of one of those things. Well, when I'm not his girlfriend anymore and I'm his fiance, they'll respect that. Well, when I'm his wife, they'll respect that. Well, when I'm the mother of his children, they'll respect that. And then it kind of just kept rolling and being put off. And, well, they know now.
Well, and you've been married 17 years.
17 years.
So, I don't know, you were, what, like
Careful.
17, 18 when you got married?
Let's go with that. No, I could definitely drink at my wedding. Yes, I was young and impressionable. How different, because I find it, on the planning side, I find it very different. How different do you find, or do you find a difference between Miami weddings and Palm Beach weddings? And what goes into each of them?
There's definitely a different vibe.
Yeah.
Between
Miami, they'll go all night long.
Between Miami and Palm Beach, for sure. I mean, it's just a different vibe.
Yeah.
I think Miami tends to have more of a Caribbean and Spanish influence. Oh, if
Miami's
you will.
Got spice and flavor all day.
Absolutely.
I'm here for it. I love it.
And Palm Beach just has a different vibe.
Totally.
And it's really, it boils down to what you prefer. What you prefer.
Yeah. And
I'd rather drive in Palm Beach than Miami, quite frankly.
I always say I'd rather go an hour north than an hour south any day of the week.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just gotten crazy with
It's
the
gotten
traffic,
harder when I have to go down for a rehearsal, and it's like a 30-minute rehearsal, and it's a 2-hour drive.
Right.
And I'm just like, can we do this on FaceTime, guys? You got this.
Right. That was like the wedding that we did down in Miami.
Oh my God, you had to give me a ride. I know. I was on the phone with my husband because she told me to park a certain place, and then I had to walk. It was like almost a mile walk. She's like, oh, it's real close to the park. And I walked. And after the rehearsal, you were like, I'll give you a ride back. And my husband's like, are you walking down the street in Miami? I was like, nah, the Reverend gave me a ride. He's like, wait, what? You're riding in the car with the Reverend? I'm like, it's fine.
We're doing confession at the same time.
It's totally fine. He knows everything about us. I love that. Any challenges you've faced and with couples that in how you advise them to handle them, whether it be family or whether it be any other challenges in their relationship that you've advised them on how to handle certain things, or even in officiating?
Well, I mean, there's always different types of challenges, whether it be, challenges from a couple being interfaith or of different cultures and backgrounds. So it's always a balancing act to blend both together. and I do a lot of interfaith ceremonies, and some are, sometimes I'm co-officiating with a rabbi or a Hindu priest or something
That's
like that.
cool. That's got to be unique too.
It is,
I love learning different cultures. I love learning different cultures, the traditions, everything.
But I have no problem if the couple just wants me to incorporate certain traditions from the different backgrounds. If I'm the only officiant, I have no problem with that. There's nothing that I've been asked to do that ever conflicted with my own personal beliefs.
Yeah, and I remember when we did the bridal show at the Addison last year, everybody had their own booths in their own areas, and they put you and Rabbi Kaplan together, and you guys were just cutting up all night long, and I'm sitting across from you like, look at this. I said, this is like one of those bad bar jokes, like a rabbi and a reverend walk into the bar.
Exactly.
It was hilarious. You guys had so much fun too.
Yeah.
He's amazing as well. I love working with him.
Yeah.
So tell me about these magazine features, because I got to get to your level. I'm jealous.
Well,
Brides magazine, People magazine. What we should have had like a scroll.
No, but I always say, like, it's not about me. It was about the couple.
If I'm getting in People magazine, it's about me.
it was something, something significant about the couple.
Yeah.
This last one, which was featured in People magazine, is for a pitcher from the Brewers.
Amazing.
Tobias, and his career has really skyrocketed in the past couple of months.
Please tell me you got a selfie with him. I know you're known for your
for sure. You know that.
You're
that.
the selfie guy at every wedding. It's so funny.
And every couple they're just so amazing.
So how did they find you?
Lots of times it's either through the planner, through the venue, or through a friend.
Yeah.
Or they've been to a wedding that I have officiated, or a family member has been to a wedding that I've officiated. It's funny because sometimes I'll get a call and it's a bride or groom, and they'll say, my aunt and uncle were at a wedding you did 3 years ago, and we tracked down, your That's information, or something like that. But the other thing about me is I'm not a sports fan.
What?
And I have married football players, baseball players, hockey players.
That works out well for you.
Tennis
you're not
players.
just like,
yeah, exactly. And
you didn't show up at the Brewers.
And I think they appreciate that.
I think so too, because even the weddings I've been at that I didn't realize, I was, messing with them like I mess with everybody. And then I realized afterwards, I'm like, oh my God, I was such an ass. But it was one of those things where I didn't know, I'm messing with them like everybody else. So
right. I mean, I'm a news junkie. So I've married a bunch of media folks too. That's cool. I get more excited about the media folks than I do about the athletes. But
I think that's cool. Very cool. What recommendations, what do you have for any insights for people people wanting to become an officiant? What are your recommendations and your thoughts on that?
Well, having trained a few people who have become officiants, number one, they've got to be passionate about it. This is not the type of thing you do
as a hobby,
or just to get a paycheck. You really have to be passionate about this type of work, because really the officiant should be the most intimate relationship you have amongst all the vendors, right? Because it's the one part that is really personal and intimate.
Yeah.
Right? The ceremony. Now, not all couples, there are certain couples that I've spoken to over the years, and they're not really focused on the ceremony. They're focused on the party, the rehearsal, and other things.
Yeah.
Well, then that's not a couple that's a good fit for me.
Yeah.
And I'm very transparent with them when I talk to them. First time, this is how I work. These are what my expectations are. These are my goals with you, right? And if that's not something that is in alignment, no problem. I can refer you to someone that can give you what you're looking for.
And we hear that a lot, where it's like, I don't care about the ceremony. It's 20, 30 minutes. And we really want to do this. We really want to do that. And I'm like, I get that. But in the party and in the excitement and in the getting all your guests together, let's not forget what this is about and why
Right.
we're all here. And the ceremony, yes, it's 20 to 30 minutes. Unless you're getting married in a Catholic church and you do the whole Ave Maria thing, it's a good hour.
Right.
But in that, I tell my couples, like, I'll plan the wedding. You guys got to plan the marriage. Because
Right.
when all the dust settles and, you're sitting back counting the checks, there's real life decisions that you have to, kind of navigate through. And I think that's where you come in a lot with that.
Yeah, and I think as a ceremony officiant, and also because I am full-time clergy, I have that benefit to be able to screen my couples and decline couples.
I think every vendor needs to be a good fit.
Because I am big on that. I am big on, we need to have chemistry.
For sure.
If we don't, I that's what I need. Like, that's what, you may not need it, but I need it.
Yeah.
And I want to have a good time.
How many weddings have you done in your career? Or did you lose track?
It's close to 4,000.
Okay, so just a few.
It's close to 4,000.
A little bit of experience.
But over time, things have changed.
Oh yeah.
And I'll tell you, back in 2010, I actually did a funeral for Leslie Nielsen, the actor, and it was that funeral that actually changed my approach, not only to funerals but to weddings and every type of ceremony, because he was very clear with what he wanted. He didn't want it in a church. He didn't want it in a funeral home. He wanted it at one of his favorite hotels, which was right down the street from where he lived.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted an open bar on each end of the casket, and he wanted his fart machine in the casket.
What now?
Fart machine.
Why does he need that after?
Because that was one of his signature things. He absolutely loved a fart machine. So people would pay their respects, get their drink, pay their respects at the casket, and I had the remote control hidden, and I'd hit the button, and the fart machine would go off. Every single person looked up and broke down laughing.
That's amazing.
Every single person.
Becca, we're doing that for you, babe.
Okay. So that changed my entire perspective on every type of ceremony.
So you just had to push the button.
And yeah.
And it's like an emotional moment.
Yeah, like nobody thought the Reverend would be a part of that, right? Like I was just standing in the corner,
This is the episode we should have spiked our drinks for.
Yeah, exactly. But, it really, it made me rethink everything I did. And it was like, here's somebody who knew what he wanted to make sure that it was carried out to the letter.
And people are still laughing at the end of it.
And people are still laughing and having a good time.
So at the end of everything, he still wanted to make people laugh, though he couldn't do it
Absolutely.
anymore. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
That's
and you can Google the story. There's speculation of the fart machine, but I'm confirming for you that it was there.
You've heard it here, folks. The fart machine was this guy. That's amazing. Oh, I love that. Well, I mean, you sold me. You can do my vow renewal whenever we decide to do it.
Let's do it.
And then you can do my funeral, too. I should that makes me feel like I should start planning now. I need to get something going.
I will say, that has been one of the more difficult challenges is I have officiated funerals for people that I've married.
Yeah.
And that's a tough one.
Yeah.
It really is.
You were there from the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And the first time it happened, the groom Gary and his wife Samantha at the time, they lived right next to my office, and she was the one on the not message boards that blew me up.
That's awesome.
And that was tough because he got a very rare form of cancer and died 5 years after their wedding.
Wow.
And they had a 2-year-old at the time.
That's so hard.
So that was a tough one. That was a tough one.
Yeah, that's
you know?
hard. That's hard.
Yeah.
So 4,000 weddings. I'm gonna throw it out there because I know we do it at every wedding. How many selfies are in your phone?
Whew. Thousands. Thousands of selfies.
I remember the first time you're like, let's take a selfie. I'm like, wait, what? What? And what I love is I always see you. You stay through cocktail hour.
Yes. It's the best part.
I know. You have the appetizers. You have a drink. You're mingling with everybody in your little clergy gear. And I love it. I love it.
Well, and you know, my couples, you know, when they meet with me in person at the office for premarital, we always take a selfie.
I love it.
And on the wedding day, they're the ones that come up to me and they're like,
yeah,
hey, we got to get our selfie.
I think at this point, if you didn't ask somebody to take a selfie, they're going to be offended. Yes. Because you're the selfie guy.
Yes. There is an expectation of a selfie. No doubt.
You run out of room on your cloud, we're done.
Yeah, I know. I've actually had to clear it a few times, but.
You have a file of selfies.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes.
Anything that we have missed or haven't touched on that you want to chat about, or any moments that have taken the cake for you?
You know, I just think that to really emphasize.
I mean, the fart machine took the cake. That wasn't even a wedding.
You see, but you know, as an event planner, you could be called upon to handle a funeral event. Oh
yeah.
You know,
I don't know if I'd be good at that.
I think you would.
So our Charleston office actually had to officiate a wedding. The officiant didn't show up. And I mean, I'm a notary. Yes, legally I can do it. It's not going to be what you do. It's going to be short, sweet, and Googled,
sure.
But we'll get it done.
Sure.
I'll be FaceTiming you during it. But she had to hurry up and she had to perform a ceremony. Found out later that the officiant had a heart attack on the way to the wedding.
Oh my goodness.
And we were just
happens.
Things happen all the time. So, planners always have a plan B, C, and D. But it's one of those things where she was like, I never thought I'd have to do that. And it's one of those things where, yes, we can. You don't want me to do it, but I mean, I've had it where I've lined up the bridal party and the officiant wasn't there. It was a judge and he wasn't there yet. And the groom looked at me and said, the judge isn't here yet. And I said, no, he's not. But we're running ceremony. And he was like, well, what are we going to do? I said, it's going to be short, sweet, and Googled, but I'll get you married if we have to get you married. You know, we wear all black. Let's roll. We don't call it off.
Yeah.
So I think.
Yeah, no. And you know, and it is important that an officiant have a backup. Mm-hmm. And my associate pastor and I, we talk on the phone, especially on a wedding day where we're both booked. We check in with each other on our way. Yeah. We let each other know when we've arrived. You know, because listen, anything could happen. You know, my associate pastor, he was leaving he had a doctor's appointment. He had a wedding that day, and his retina was detached from his eye.
That happened to my dad like 10 times. He's had so many surgeries.
And he's like, I cannot go do this wedding.
Yeah, no.
And, you know, I was able to get on the phone, get one of our emergency backups.
Unbelievable.
And, you know, we keep all our files in the cloud. So I can go to Dropbox, send the file to anyone.
So he clicks on the couple's name. He has the selfie. He has the whole file.
Exactly.
Everything. He knows who he's looking for.
Because, I mean, you know, you have to have an emergency backup.
There's always got to be a plan B.
You know, there has to be.
For sure.
There has to be.
Thank you so much for making the drive up.
No, thank you.
And you have your own podcast.
I have my own podcast, The Michael Calderin Show.
I'm going to watch it.
You'll have to come on sometime.
Yeah.
You know, you and the entire team.
We'll bring them down.
Of course, once we're done with today's show, we got to take a selfie.
I mean, yes.
Hello. We need whiskey in there, too.
We need whiskey in the selfie.
Whiskey is not my dog, by the way.
Whiskey's my dog. He's the office mascot.
Just for the record, because I don't want my dogs to get jealous if they see the show.
When you come home...
And when I come home, they're going to be smelling whiskey on me.
And it's not going to be
And it's not going to be the type you drink. And they're going to be like, wait a minute, you've been cheating on us.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Next episode of This Takes the Cake, airing every Thursday on Spotify, Apple iTunes, and YouTube channel. Follow us on @StunningAndBrilliantEvents and @ThisTakesTheCake on Instagram. Thank you so much. We'll see you guys next time.